Tszyu is looking to make another impact in the junior middleweight division, and he has adopted a new moniker, the Soul Taker. Soon he has a bout coming up as he prepares to eventually have a showdown against Charlo. Let's talk about what's going on with Tszyu. It was recently announced that Tszyu will be taking on Carlos Ocampo as he prepares to finally have his showdown with undisputed champion Charlo for the junior middleweight super welterweight championships of the world. In his last fight, he had taken on Tony Harrison, and he defeated Tony Harrison with a 9th round TKO. But Carlos Ocampo is the second fighter that he's going to face prior to Charlo taking on this opponent in his home country of Queensland, Australia, as a tune-up. Now, there's a way to look at this on two sides. First of all, the fight is in his home country, and that's okay because he will enjoy all of which he can being comfortable within the friendly confines. And his current record of 22-0 with 16 KOs speak that he can represent at home pretty well, just as he did with Harrison. However, the other way to look at this is that taking on quality opposition as tune-ups is something that old school fighters used to do, but not so much guys of current day. And the fighters like Ocampo or Harrison should never consider themselves tune-up. Now, I understand that Harrison may have been near the end. He wasn't at his best when he went over to Australia to face Tszyu. But Ocampo is still a fighter out here who is looking to get back at a championship opportunity himself. And he brings his record of 34-2 with 22 KOs into the ring against Tszyu. And prior to his loss to Sebastian Fundora, he had won 12 straight, 9 out of the 12 being knockouts. And his loss to Fundora was a unanimous decision. So when we look at what's going on with Ocampo, he's very much a contender in his own mind, and it should be that way. So as he faces off against Tszyu, he's going to bring in something that he understands will make a difference, and that is a championship mindset. Now, against Harrison, Harrison looked a ghost of his former self when he was in there against Tszyu. There was none of the swag, none of the moxie and boxing ability that he was noted for. It looked like his legs were shot, and it looks like he didn't have the confidence of which he spoke days leading up to the fight when he was doing press. Tszyu picked up on that right away, and as in typical bully fashion, took the fight to Harrison. And once he realized that Harrison wasn't offering up much of his own, Tszyu took control of the fight, and he eventually got rid of Harrison inside the distance. I'm not so certain that will be the case when he gets in there with Ocampo. Ocampo lost to Earl Spence for his first loss in professional boxing, and that was a first round KO. And at that time, it looked like he was a deer caught in headlights when he was in there with Spence and didn't perform very well at all. But he had learned along the way how to be resilient and come back from that. Again, when you talk about his unanimous decision loss to Sebastian Fundora, which was in October of 2022, that was more about the height and reach of Fundora more than Ocampo's limitations. However, as we've known, he can get people out of there. Ocampo definitely has a knockout punch, and I believe Tszyu will try to take the fight to him. Now, Tszyu has stated at the presser that he expects this to be one of the harder fights that he has had in his career. I think it will be hard simply because of the makeup of a fighter like Ocampo, who will bring something as far as intestinal fortitude. He's not going to lay down in front of the Australians. He will fight like he's fighting in his own backyard. Plus, he's already suffered defeats, so that's not going to be a thing where it waves over his head and he has to protect an undefeated record. So what Tszyu needs to be mindful of is the championship spirit that the fighter can bring and what it will mean to defeat Tszyu on his home country soil. That's what will make for an interesting paradox with this fight. And I do believe Ocampo is capable of doing that. We just have to see him carry it out. The fight against Fundora, again, should not be looked at as a barometer. Fundora presented a whole different set of issues. And fighters like that, meaning Fundora, with his height and his reach, at times that still can be intimidating for certain fighters. So you have to understand that he's gotten over that now. And now he's in there against a man who lines up pretty much like himself. Now Tszyu, who's 28 years old, is 5'8.5" with a 72-inch reach. And Ocampo, who's coming into this fight, is 27 years old. He's 5'10.5" with a 73-inch reach. And he can bang. I'm telling you, this could turn into something, especially if we don't have to deal with cuts. If it's just the two fighters ham-fisted going in there against one another, it's going to have to come down to who is the more intelligent fighter. I talk about this all the time because skill sets can be at different places, but what can't be measured is a man's will and the testament that he has within himself, where he wants to either go for it all or won't be denied or things of that nature. That will be something that will be presented in this fight, and I do believe Ocampo may be the very good opponent to test that in Tszyu. But it must be stated that Ocampo is no Jermell Charlo, and Tszyu has spoken ill of Charlo, calling him names and saying certain things. I don't know if that's just to drum up the hype for an eventual showdown, or if he really feels so and thinks so lowly of a fighter like Jermell Charlo. Charlo is no joke. You can say what you want about his personality and even characteristic traits that have been on display outside of the ring. But one of the things I've seen inside of the ring is he's a very complete, well-rounded, well-trained and schooled fighter. Tszyu, who is a boxer puncher, doesn't box nearly as well as Jermell Charlo, doesn't punch nearly as well as Charlo. We don't even know if he punches as well as Ocampo, but we are going to find out. As I look ahead to this fight, I do pick Tszyu because the fight is in Australia. That alone. If the fight were on U.S. soil or a neutral site, I would give Ocampo even more opportunity for a victory here. There's something about guys who only want to do it on their soil. And Tszyu seems to be doing that. One thing about his dad traveled to the US a lot to face off against quality opponents, and he fared well most of the time. But there's something about this young man where they're trying to keep him on that soil. Male Charlo is not coming to Australia. You're going to have to face him in the US, and that will be probably the biggest obstacle you'll have to overcome because of the pressure and who you're fighting. This is Stormy B Man. Shout out to the mighty LDBC and Liberated Perspective, a third eye view of the world. For more content such as this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know your thoughts about Tszyu, who will be facing Ocampo on June 18th. Peace to everyone out there and everyone